Hello, beautiful people. Welcome. Latest episode 19. Swallows going nuts up there. Episode 19, I think. Might be wrong. I don't know. Anyway, welcome to this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Bonnet hinges are on. That bit there isn't painted. Arthur. Okay. Right, got these D-post trims in. Nice job. Headlining, as you see, it's kind of a bit messy up there. I'll tidy it up. Looks better on that side. Trick to getting these things in is to take the filler strip out. That side's easy because I'm right-handed, and that's easy to work on. This side, oh, you missed out on some quality fucking swearing. You really did. Anyway, the filler strip is back in again now, and these D-post trims look nice. They're reproduction parts. So you see the vent is behind. The top vent, that wire that's hanging down is for the heating room window. I've got to sort those out still. But that's those done. Next I'm going... Okay, it's time for some swearing. Top tailgate. These screws, these fixings that hold the handle on are about, well, what's that? Probably getting on for about 2, maybe 2.5 mil fat. And the tailgate don't close because they clash with the galv plate on top of the bottom tailgate. I can't get the bottom tailgate down any lower. I can't get the top tailgate up any higher. So I'm kind of resorting now to taking these screws out, marking this edge here, and filing them down. Why can't people just fucking make stuff that fits? I mean, it's not fucking difficult, is it? Anyway, this I'm pleased with. I'm glad I left it galv. I think it looks good galv. I'm happy with it. It looks fantastic. It matches the plain metal finish on these catches. Oh, the other whinges. This is the bolts that I drilled out, and the thread's just gone on it on the captive plate. Don't you just fucking love it? So the problem is now I can't hold this catch in the correct location. I can't access it because the captive plate is built into the D-post. So I'm going to have to find a way of either using a slightly larger screw for now, or helicoiling it. Options are being investigated. Beer helps. Beer, not just for breakfast. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. We've got a leak on the cooling system. I told you in one of the previous videos that it had a pressurization issue and it's leaking there. So if I balance that there, and then using my pump it up. I had to really go to pump it, and it's leaking just around the back there. See specks of fluid and stuff coming out. Tiny little, you see it? Pretty clear as soon as it comes off where the problem is. And you can see that the pipe is wiggling as it goes through the side of the tank. So the solder has failed around this joint. The first thing I really need to do is to kind of clean it up, heat it up, get rid of the old solder, and then use some flux, just plumber's flux, and some plumber's solder and a blowtorch, really just to resolder it. It's a shame because I've powder coated this fucker. Never mind, shit happens. So wire, it's not the most beautiful repair. I ended up having to replace the pipe because I could not get the solder to stick to the old pipe even though I cleaned it up, but then it's looking a bit tatty all over. So another bit of 10mm pump. I'll file this bit back so it looks a bit tidier. It was just like it was on the level, but it's holding pressure now. So I pumped it up to about 10 psi. This cooling system's run quite low. About 5 minutes ago, and it's still 9.5 now, which is pretty acceptable. I've also managed to rob a breather pipe, which I was missing from over here, the one that caused me all the bothers. This is an original spec breather pipe, but it is as rock hard as you like. So I think what I'm going to do is use a little spring up inside, spring like that, coily spring, get it in big lengths on eBay. Hold it. Put it up inside the hose. There's the hose there. So if I wedge that up inside, Ah, so it's gone up inside the hose. Now, when I bend it over now, you notice that it doesn't kink anymore. Yeah? So that's really why I sort of recommended that spring. I probably want to make sure it's a stainless spring rather than anything else. Chased up the bearing companies, not bearing, Simply Bearings, who supplying the belts for you for the power steering. And it's fucking happened again. So what's happened is I've ordered something, checked the order, gone through to checkout, used PayPal Express because it's easy. PayPal Express has corrupted the fucking address into a mixture between my home postcode and the delivery address. And the bloody thing hasn't arrived again. Nothing to do with Simply Bearings. They've done a sterling job. So they're going to send another pair of belts out. I'm out of breath because I've been carrying a gazebo up the hill. And hopefully I can have this power steering working tomorrow. But what a fucking ball's ache. PayPal Express, don't use it. Front bumper's on. Looks nice, doesn't it? Except for... I'm pretty sure it wasn't me because the whole bloody thing was wrapped up in bubble wrap until I put the brackets on the back and then hung it on the car. I'm a bit irritated. Anyway, I'll see if I can just polish that out. It's quite a thick powder coat and I've got some base colour that's colour matched to pretty much the same sort of thing. But it just fucking ballses me off, it does. Lots of very, very sweary videos today, guys. I'm not going to apologise for it, it is. Dashboard cleaned up nicely. Again, this is the TFR, cleaned up very, very nicely. That's not the steering wheel that's staying on this one. I got the original steering wheel for it. I fixed the glove box, so the glove box now uses the same key as the tailgate lock. Dun dun dun. Arrived. Wipers got sent to the wrong pissing address. The supplier has fully acknowledged the cock-up on their part, so unlike the PayPal Express cock-up, and I've cancelled my bloody PayPal account now, it wasn't anything to do with PayPal on this particular occasion, so the supplier has taken their hat off, admitted humbly with their cloth cap twirling between their fingers that it was their cock-up and they're going to send some out on express delivery. So I'm going to have to rob some wipers probably off my father's car. I've also robbed the washer fluid bottle. That's my bottle, it's his cap. Rocker cap, it's not rocker cap, what am I talking about? The pump on the top there, that pump, whatever that fucking thing is. I've had to rob that, but it works. Blue bonnet has gone on, but it's touching the bloody wings, so I scraped some paint off, so I'm going to have to adjust these bumpers just down a little bit. I hadn't noticed that when I put it on. That's somewhat irritating. I'm just going to take the fan off, because the fan needs to come off for me to put the shroud on, but also it's going to be a lot easier for me to adjust the power steering pump belt when it goes on. So fan, can wait there. Right, now I need to get alternator belt loose off, then put the power steering belt on behind. So let me crack on with that, then I'm going to top up the reservoir, bleed the system through and pray to the god of power steering fluid that this box doesn't leak. Belt's on and tensioned. Now I need to, it's actually relatively square as well, which is interesting because obviously this pulley is designed to go, it's not completely square, but it's square enough for the job. When I replace the crank pulley, then I shall also turn this fella around so it's the correct direction. Right, now we're going to need a lot of power steering fluid. That'll be power steering working then. We're down to one chappet on the engine now. Just one. It's resolute, isn't it? Just one. Little fucker. Right, okay, I'm going to put the fan shroud in now, and then the fan can go back on again. And once again, the good lady fate farts in my face. I've stripped one of the bolts. The thread's disappeared inside the water pump nose. Fucking bollocks. I'm going to leave it without the bolt for the time being. I have to get the Kelly coils are at home. I'm not running it at high revs at the moment. I'm just hoping that 3 bolts will be enough. That 4, because it wasn't a racing engine, so I'm assuming that 4 was overkill. 3 would be enough. Probably work with 2 to be honest, but another job for me to do, eh? Zippity doo dah. Right, now next thing I need to do is get this on. There we go. That goes over the top of the a spot of bother to get the fan shroud past the bottom of the top hoses. It's a lot easier to fit when there's no hoses on it at all, and no fan of course, but then you can't fit the fan bolts with the shroud in place. So the shroud's now in place, and this comes up with the next challenge, that this is a slightly later radiator, and the fixings were in a different place. All I'm going to do is mount the top of the shroud on one bolt, and I'm going to probably get myself a nice tidy bit of steel bar to run along the top there and bolt it onto the existing mount, so I don't have empty bolt holes. I really don't fancy drilling into the top of the radiator to put another riv nut in there. You can see the proximity of the core underneath it, so that ain't going to happen. Now I'm hoping that that will, in fact you can see there already that those bolts are actually touching top of the core. What about this one? I might have to put a fatter washer underneath there. No, see that one cleared, but under this one there might appear to have been a mark there on the core, which you can just about see there where the nut has been on it. Fatter washers, check this side. I haven't got any bolts shorter than this. I could always just cut it down, I suppose. Yeah, that one's done the same thing. I'm going to cut these things down by about 3 threads. I'm going to get busy with the angle grinder. All of these are going to get cut down, because that's just silly, Richard. That one hasn't quite touched, just a tiny bit. That one has. So it's going to shorten these bolts. I'll be back directly. Right, so we got back. Didn't entirely go to plan, but it's good news. And it's definitely a lesson for people that think you don't need to MOT cars because they're over 40 years old, because that's just fucking lunacy. Right, okay, the fuel cap seal is missing. Brand spanking new fuel cap seal's missing. Okay, it didn't actually go through an MOT, in fairness. I paid the guy for an hour of his time. Direction indicators flashing more than 120 times, that's an advisory. Oh, headlight on the driver's side doesn't secure correctly, which I'm going to look into. I think he's probably adjusted it beyond the extent of where the screw goes. That's not a problem, I can fix that in about a minute and a half. Fuel leak, carburettor near side, fix that. Offside rear metal brake pipe not secured to the inner wing. The bloody captive nut thing has popped out, so I'm going to change that style for something more secure. Number plate not secured properly. That was last night. I did that after about 4 beers. Play in near side front wheel bearing. Panhard rod loose. I don't know why that's loose. I mean, it's something I put on when I first did the chassis rebuild. Steering stop not secure on the offside front. Easy enough to fix. 4 metal brake pipes are touching the inner wing. They don't like that in the MOT manual. So I've got to move the brake line so none of them touch any part of other metal, and they're all got clips to keep them secure. The front to rear fuel line is insecure. I've probably seen on one of the early videos where I had to move the fuel line so I could fit the floor supports. Exhaust pipe not connected correctly at the rear. That's because it's a cheap, nasty fucking exhaust and it doesn't fit properly, and I had to modify the mount, and now the mount's clashing. There is an oil leak on the rear axle. I think a nut's loose on the diff, and also they're saying the springs are weak on the near side. He's put the near side, offside, sorry, he said on the offside. Now let me stop this and I'll show you. So this is kind of, you can see I've started, this is kind of where we can see and get a good hand width in between the tyre there, and on this side I can't. So the spring on the front is weaker from one side to the other. Again, you've got to love them. And on this one, I can get a good hand in there. And on this one, I can get a massive hand in there. So both offside springs are weaker than both near side springs. Now, I really don't know what to do about that. It's possible, I guess it's possible that I've put two springs on the same side of the car, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to go through my pictures, look at the markings on the springs, and it could well be that I just need to take one back spring and move it to a front. Swap them over and see what happens. But it has got a definite lean to the driver's side. Sunday, I spent most of the day rattling around the list of minor fixes that are required for the MOT to go through. And I thought, well, do you know what, I'm going to put these seats in. So I retrieved the new rear seat from the store. This isn't it in its complete state. That's the fabric down there. I've got it covered up. So I thought I'd leave the bags on it. But then I started to notice marks all over the vinyl. And what's basically happened is, when I've taken this apart to adjust the locks and so forth, what I've found is that they've not blasted off the inside of it. So the inside of the shell has continued to rot, I guess, or just be dusty or crappy, and then that has gone all over the outer shell, and you can see here where it stained the vinyl. So I'm going to get some vinyl cleaner on that and clean it up. I'm taking it out because I've got grubby hands. You can see there, look, big speck where something's come out of the back of it and then rested on the vinyl. Not very happy with it. But anyway, I did manage to get the catches all lined up now, so they line up beautifully. And I'm happy with that. And they are going to look the cat's arse. This trim piece around the edge there, it doesn't normally exist on these things. The other thing I'm not happy with on this, and it's going to change, is all of this edge here really needs a complete skimmer filler from one end to the other. I may well actually have a better seat back than that one. I've got a pile of them at the back there, and it could well be that I just get another one that's got lots of holes in it and weld them all up, and I've got the Palomino paint, and I just paint the damn thing and replace it. It's easy enough to get the cushion on and off the back. It's just held in with screws. Screws go through onto captive plates on the back of the vinyl. Let me lift it up. So you've got these captive plates here. That's my initials there. These captive plates all over the place that secure the vinyl in. Yeah. So that's going to need a quick clean. I've got that bit working. That goes over the back again. That hasn't come up quite as nice as I thought it would do. It's not good enough. There's a scratch on it already as well. So yeah, I may well just sort the seat, the back of the seat back. I mean, it looks fantastic from here, but when you get up close to it, you can see it's not the best. I mean, look at it from that angle there. The reflection on that top edge there. It's pretty gash, isn't it? So I need to put the seat in for the MOT and prove that it can be secured in the upright position. But then as soon as the MOT is done on Wednesday, I will remove this seat back or restore another seat back and paint it and pop it in. It won't take me long, half a day, I reckon, to get that seat fully sorted out. Right, okay, let's get it together. Front seats are in. I've got this driver's window to wind up and down much easier. Oh, incidentally, these are the cheap, nasty replacement window winder handles that are supplied now, because the original style is unobtainium. There's no way is that going to last more than 2 winds before it snaps. So they're going back. They have beer mat written on the label, as you can see now. The winder goes up and down nicely. There's one interesting thing, by the way, that when you're sitting in the car trying to wind the window up, your hand will clash onto the door handle. Look, like that, see? That's why these things are such an utter ballsache. Wasn't a luxury thought, really, was it? Whoever designed the winder handles had extremely small hands. And we know what that means, don't we, kids? Got this tailgate to close a world easier by cutting about 3/4 of the trim out. So basically, where it was a round profile, it's now a C-shaped profile. I'm going to tidy it all up now I know it works. I'll make it look like it should be like that. The biggest issue was along this top rail here, because I think that was just miles too tight. So I reckon if I were just to cut the top rail in the future, then it might, see that side's just gone down now, palm pressure, as has that side. Anyway, it's better. Tailgate's now opening and closing. That was one of the things that Mr. MOT was somewhat nervous about. And I'll show you the bit of paper actually, because it did make me laugh. Where are we? Not brave enough to secure the rear window. Direction indicators flashing more than 120 times per minute. It's now an advisory, so I'm going to get a different flash unit for it. It just means I've got to take the panel underneath the steering column off. Oh. Arsehole. That's going to get glued in there, I reckon. That's irritating, that is. Right, it's another job for tomorrow. I'm not doing it now. Right, I'm packing up, 8 o'clock. So yes, the car is definitely on the piss. Definitely. I can see that anyway. The passenger side is much higher, maybe an inch higher than the driver's side. Now, I have been round, first of all, done the obvious thing, checking the tyre pressures, but the gap between the top of the wheel and the arch is much tighter on the driver's side than it is on the passenger side. So then I'm thinking, right, okay, back springs are slightly taller than the front springs, I've balls that up. No, I've been round double checked. So I've basically got the blue stripe on the front springs. You can't see in there, but the springs have got blue stripes. And the back springs have got green stripes on them. So, I've got the measurements down for the springs. So, rear springs with the green stripe, green, should have a load rating of 863 pounds, should have a free length of 409.7, we'll call it 410 millimetres, so it'll be 41 centimetres, and should have 7.63 coils. And the blue, 716 pounds, 39 centimetres, call it give or take a fart, and a 7.18 coils. I've got the springs off the back. I've jacked it up on my beam, CJ Auto's beam. Nice bit of kit there. I'm not going underneath the car, hence there's lots of jacks. Just working it from the sides here. I haven't got any long stands here. I need to get a long stand. Right, okay, spirit level. Oh, dear. So what I can do is I can check on the beam first of all. The beam's level. Okay? So the beam's level is the bumper level. Bumper's level. Top tailgate level. Front. It's difficult to work out in the front because there's lots of curves down the bonnet. That says it's level. I don't believe it entirely. On top of the bumper. Still leaning towards that front driver's side corner. So I think the problem is on the front springs. One of the front springs is not right. Now, let's measure next. What we'll do is we'll measure from floor to wheel arch lip tip. 1 second. If I extend the tape measure, run it through the centre of the hub, and I am guessing 73. And on this side, we're assuming the concrete is level. I'll get in there. 791. So it's 2 centimetres taller on the other side than it is on this side. Inch. So this side's an inch lower than that side, even though I've got the back supported on a beam. Now let's measure, just for sanity's sake, let's measure through the hub to the wheel arch. So I'm measuring here from the back. I've got 94 1/4. here, spring compressor out of the way, I have got $95.25. There's a centimetre difference at the back here. Now that could be to do with the wheel alignment, it could be to do, sorry, wing alignment. It could be to do with the fact that the jack is level. So I found this really helpful little table here in the workshop manual under the supplement chapter 13 in the Haynes workshop overhand manual. And it gives you the rating in pounds of each of the springs. It gives you what the stripe should be on the springs. It gives you the free length and the number of coils. From what I can work out, the Brit part springs that I've got, the closest I can get is the blue-white stripe, which is the 133 rating, 16.4 for, no, that's not the right one, sorry, it's the red-yellow rating, red-yellow stripe rating, £150, which is the same as the green stripe. It's got a free length of 17.18, and it's got 7.65 coils. So let me show you what that means. So, let's set the book with me, so I don't have to remember it, do I? So, let me go back over to these springs. So first of all, we're counting the number of coils. We'll start with the end of the coil there. So we've got 1 coil, 2 coil, 3 coil, 4 coil, 5 coil, 6 coil, 7 coils, and more than half. Okay, so 7.5 plus. Now the only one that kind of comes in that sort of area, there's a 7.55, there's a 7.65, and there's an 8.85. So it's definitely not yellow stripe. It's one of these two. Okay, now the key difference between these two, 7.55 and 7.65, or there's a 7.63 there, which is the green stripe, but the free length is completely wrong. So let me measure the free length out now. Measure out. There he is. And I'll measure him from the flat on the end of the coil and to the top of the coil. I'm getting 4.1. That's actually 420. 420 is the unsprung length. Okay, and they're in one. So maybe just the unsprung length is what it's suggesting. So maybe they are green stripe, but they're just a little bit too long. I don't know. 420, and turning round, and we'll measure from the top of that one. And we're getting 420 again. Let's get the other one. You probably didn't see that because I'm looking at the tape measure and not the camera. And this one is 420. Yeah, give or take a millimetre. And then turn it around so the other end of the spring is out and measure it up. And again, 420 or 490 this thing. And check out this for wheel bearing play. So God knows what's happening there. It's a good reason, chaps, why you guys need to get your MOTs done. I mean, I've had every nut and bolt in this car apart, so I don't know what the problem is there. It wasn't as bad as that when he tested it. I gave him a call and he said no, he could just about feel play. So obviously the locking nut hasn't worked properly. So I'm going to put these back on, the way round. I have got that one, red mark, was on the passenger side, so this is going to go onto the driver's side. I'm actually going to wipe over first of all. Can I be asked? Yes. The other test I did with it resting centrally on the chassis rails and no weight from the axle whatsoever. I've got the axle resting on a couple of trolley jacks. We're more or less level. Maybe half a centimetre in it, but I can lift the car at this point. So there could just be a slight issue with the battery weighing a little bit more than the washer bottle. But it's well within its tolerances. I'll measure the distance to the top of the turret on the chassis. Now I know this thing's fairly level. And we'll do that. Wheel bearing was a bit of a mystery, to be honest, because it's got the lock plate and everything was in it, and the lock nuts and the wheel bearing nut were all nice and tight. I can only think that the hub was not correctly home, or for some inexplicable reason, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when I put it all together, I decided not to do it up, but decided to lock the locking tab. So I'm just looking at the flasher speed here, and you can see that's pretty aggressive. I've got a new flasher unit to put in. Well, that was a relatively easy fix. So what I've done, wired the new flasher unit into place. Green and yellow goes is the feed wire. Light green, brown goes to the switch. Black, earths. It needs an earth because it does, and that's nice and solid, isn't it? That'll do the job. Quality. Right, now, what else have we crossed off the list? So on the list we need a pen, direction indicators, flashing, done. Fuel cap. I got in touch with the supplier I bought the fuel cap from on eBay. It's an all makes cap, and the supplier tells me that the seal comes separately. I bought the seal from somewhere else. I'm not buying from that supplier because they could have put it on the fucking advert, couldn't they? Anyway, just irritating. Right, so that's that done. Now, what else have we got here? Lower pulley not running true. I've got another pulley on order. Headlights have been sorted. Pretty much everything on that page is done. Right, to do. Oil leak at rear. Yes, they all do that, sir. Exhaust pipe not fitted correctly at rear. I'll have a look at that. And brake pedal spongy. Now, this one I spoke to the tester about, and basically you push the pedal down and it goes about. And it's basically because it feels spongy for the first inch of its travel, and then it locks solid, and you can pump it, and it didn't come up. So there's fuck all wrong with that, and he's agreed. Right, I need to get this dash back together again now, and then I'm going to look at the exhaust, and then I'm going to start putting these trim panels on. Done, done, done. And then I want to look at this seat back, which, as I mentioned before, I wasn't happy with. Oh, wipers came as well. Parcel arrived this morning. Saturday delivery, and I missed it. But thank you, Famous 4. You did your absolute best, and I let you down. Shut this. Wet out here today. Look at that. Packer job, eh? It's the business, I think. Well chuffed with it. I might just double check what's going on down here, because it's almost like one of these clips here hasn't gone in. Let's just double check. It feels like there's one around here. Needs to push through. The knot works. Oops, just dropped my phone. Pretty pleased with it. It'll do. And I put the inside rubber on the top as well. This is a fair piece of unobtainium. All the rattles have stopped, see? How about that for a piece of work? Nice job, eh? Let's get the light out of here now. Right, now, having done that, on to the next job. So what happened next? Well, took the car for his MOT. I didn't video it for some reason, not entirely sure I know why. Yeah, the car went for its MOT, passed beautifully. Only minor issue was towards the end of the MOT, car kept cutting out. And it started up again and then sort of cut out again. I thought it might be some sort of fuel vaporization issue because the exhaust tailpipe is quite close to the metal fuel line. Anyway, so we let it cool down, wrote the paperwork out, paid for it, set off home, and barely made it half an hour and the thing conked out. And then sort of like it started up again, so I was pulled into a safe lay-by off the North Devon Link Road and just checked all the wiring and stuff. I mean, when it was cutting out, it was a complete ignition failure. It was like someone had just pulled the low tension lead off the coil, off the ignition coil. It did it again, and then it did it again, and again. You see the house martins now. They're not swallows, they're house martins. And again. And eventually I managed to get it to another lay-by about 1.5 miles further up the road, and fiddled and fucked around with it for 25 minutes, half an hour. No tools in the car whatsoever, just me teeth, and I was chomping at bits of wire and trying to pull terminals off, and convinced it was something to do with the ignition system. And as I say, no tools, no nothing, and then thought, yep, fixed it. It was running for about 25 minutes, absolutely no problem at all, sitting there at idle, revved up quite happily, got it on the road, conked out, fucking thing. That's gratitude for you, isn't it? Now, while I was sort of coasting down the road, annoying everyone, trying to find another lay-by, which I did. It's just a couple of 100 yards on the road. I was thinking, when I first got this car, the ignition wires were a right mess around the coil. And I chopped a whole ton of additional rubbish out of it. So I called my dad up, who brought my car down, the blue Range Rover, just in case we needed to tow it. And then we sort of like, I found a knife in the centre console of that, chopped a piece of spare wire off, one of the gauges in the car there, chopped a piece of spare wire off, and ran a 12 volt feed directly to the coil from the battery. Well, directly to the ballast feed from the battery, and it drove beautifully after that. Absolutely no issues at all. So I surmise that it's the ignition feeds to the ballast resistor on the coil that have failed. That was what caused all the problems. Now I think that might have actually been a long-standing problem, and in the next episode I've diagnosed it and I've pulled a epic pile of shite wiring out of the car. That's what I've been doing today, because unfortunately I didn't have time to fix it that afternoon of the MOT. Because I had to be somewhere else, 200 miles away with my missus, and I had a job to do the next day, so this kind of just got parked here. But that's pretty much where it is at the moment. It's MOT'd, it's road legal, and it goes again, but you'll have to wait for the next episode for the driving test. Cheers, thanks for watching.